Accuquilters! This is Darla from Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop, and I'm so happy that you joined us today. I have a most exciting project that I want to show you, and it's just, you're gonna love it. Anyway, this is it. This is the snowman quilt. It's made from this panel, and we do have these in stock. But isn't this the cutest panel with this little snow people on there? And all these different pieces to cut apart. Anyhow, I know how it can be really complicated sometimes to try to figure out what to do with a panel, especially one that comes in different pieces like this one does. So, and I know that in the past when I've tried to make projects with them, they get a little wonky and weird, and they just don't seem to work out. So I have some tips for you. And we get to use Accuquilt to do it. So anyhow, let me tell you what you need to do. First of all, you need to take your panel. Oh, and I should tell you this, that you can use this method with any kind of panel, any size, and it can be in multiple pieces or it can be just one big panel. But it's the same concept, and I think that this will give you better luck with piecing your quilts with panels. So the first thing you want to do is take your panel and maybe spritz it down with some water, or if you're one of those pre-washers, that's great too. Pre-wash it, and what'll happen is if you get it a little bit damp and let it relax a little bit, and then you press it, then it'll help straighten out any parts that are a little bit wonky on there. Sometimes, you know, when it gets wrapped on the bolt during the manufacturing process, it gets twisted a little bit, and this will help fix that. It just turns out that this one doesn't have that problem. So I couldn't even show you how to fix it because this one looks really good. So that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing that you want to do is you want to take a pair of scissors, and you're just going to cut in between where it shows all these different sections, the different panels. So you're just going to cut them apart. And they usually give you a nice big wide piece there where you can cut it. So that helps a whole lot. Okay, then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to square it up. Now, what do I mean by squared up? Well, sometimes even when it's printed and it seems to be all nice and even everywhere, sometimes it isn't quite square. So we need to, when we're quilting, we want to make sure we have those nice perfect 90-degree angles so that when we put different size pieces together that they all match up nicely. So what you want to do is you want to take a great big square ruler like this one. The bigger the better, because when you think about going from this end to this end and you want this 90-degree angle to be really accurate, then the longer span that you have from this corner to this corner and this corner to this corner, the bigger span, the more accurate your cut will be. So get the biggest one that you can, and that'll just help you a long way down the road. And it's one of those investments that you're going to have forever too. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your square up ruler, and we're just going to pretend this one is already cut apart, okay? And we want to take those edges and make sure they're nice and square. And you see how this one actually looks really good. So if I put it on that 1/4 inch mark on that black line around the edge of the purple, I can just lay that on there, and that looks pretty good. So then I'm just going to take my rotary cutter and cut just like this, and cut just like this along there to get that nice square cut. Then I'm going to flip the whole thing around and do it again on the opposite corner. I know he's going to be upside down for you, but that's just, you know, he's going to be upside down for you at some point anyway. So we're not going to worry about it. Okay. So then to continue with the square up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a line on this side over here that is going to even out. So you know how I have this one trimmed off? I'm going to lay on this black line again. I'm going to put a 1/4 inch on there. I hope you can see that. Let's see. I'm going to move it down a little more because I want there to be a 1/4 inch extra on this side, because that's going to be in my seam allowance. So I'm going to put this on the 3/8 inch line there. I hope you can see that. Okay? And then once I have that lined up, and I'm going to do the same over here, going to make sure it's similar along this way, so that I know that this corner is also square as this one will be, because we already did this one. Right, then we're just going to cut it like this, and then we should have about a 1/4 inch all the way around all 4 sides. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to check it again this way and check all 4 to make sure it's nice and square. We have that 90 degrees. That's going to save you a ton of problems down the line. Okay? All right, so now that we have them all squared up, the next thing is we need to find a common denominator. Do you remember that from math class, a common denominator? You know, the denominator is the number that's on the bottom of a fraction. Well, we're going to find the common denominator. So let's take our ruler, and we're going to measure all these different pieces and see what size they turn out to be. Because what we want to do is we want to fill in the quilt nicely, so that and have pieces that are actually going to end up fitting together like a puzzle really well. And it's going to be so much easier if everything is the same size, or if their denominator is the same. I can't think of the right term, but you know what I mean. Okay. So let's look at this. So this one, if I measure inside the purple, this one is from purple to purple. I am at almost 11.5 inches, all right? Almost 11.5 inches. And if I go the opposite way, then I end up at almost 9.5 inches. Well, those are going to be really tricky to work with, aren't they? But I'm going to show you how to overcome that. Okay, now this one is going to be just over 12.5 inches, that direction. And this direction we have about 11.5. And these two on this side are the same sizes as these two on this side. So we know that. All right, now let's look at this big one in the middle. Okay, it looks like we have 17.5 inches wide and 22.5 inches tall. Now how are we going to do that? So what you need to do is just think of a number that if you trim off around each piece, or if you add to a little bit on each piece, then you end up with pieces that will fit nicely together. So what I determined is that if I came up with the number 6 and use that for all these pieces, that's my common denominator, then I could actually make these pieces work together. Am I making sense yet? I hope so. So anyway, let me show you how that works. So you see how this big square, it has this little frame around it, but that makes it fit perfectly with this little block and with this block and those over there. And you see how these are the same size, right? Then I have a block here and one here, and these are all the same size blocks. So this one is 2 blocks wide, this one is 3 blocks wide, and it is 4 blocks tall. So that's what I mean by the common denominator. So each of these smaller blocks is 6 inches. Of course, cut at 6.5 inches because it includes the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And these were the tricky ones because these didn't quite come out at 2 blocks tall, but after trimming them and framing them, I could have them come out at 1.5 blocks tall. You see how that works? It's great. Don't you love math? Anyhow, that's what we're going to do, and let me show you how I came up with that. So now that I have a common denominator of 6 inches, now I need a plan. So let me show you how I came up with my plan. Okay, here is the sample grid that I came up with for the snowman quilt. So here is my big piece, and these are the 2 squarish panels, and these are those 2 that are shorter, but they're the same width. So what I did was I trimmed them all down, and then where it didn't fit, I added a little bit because I decided I wanted a little frame on there. So I trimmed them down to about 1 inch smaller than I needed them to be. So this one should be 12 inches tall, this one. I cut it at 11.5 inches. And then I could put a little 1.5 inch strip all the way around it. And then when it comes time to trim it up and square it off, that leaves my frame all the way around the edges. So it's really not as complicated as it sounds. I'm making it sound terribly complicated, but it's really easy to do. So then what I did was I just put this frame all the way around and then trimmed it down to the size that I needed. And that's so that it would fit in there, okay? So then you can do a grid like this. You can use graph paper, or I actually did it, if you're an Excel person or a computer person, you can actually make a grid from Excel and do the same thing. And so I figured out where I could put them all together and they fit together like a puzzle. So each of these little squares will finish at 6 inches, but I need to cut them at 6.5. Remember that? And then this one, when I trimmed it up, was 3 squares wide and 4 squares tall. Is that making sense? Okay. All right, so now we need to fill in those spaces. So this is the really kind of fun part, because you just use your imagination on what to put in there. What I did is I used the flying geese die from Accuquilt, which is awesome. It actually finishes at 3 inches by 6 inches. So if you put 2 of them together, then that would be 6 inches by 6 inches. Isn't that fun? So you can fill those in, put them in any of these spaces on your diagram. And then I also used, I made 6-inch snowball blocks. And the easy way to do the snowball blocks is to do it with the Accuquilt snowball block die, which will cut all those pieces for you. But there's also another way to do it. I didn't actually have this one at home, so I did it the old-fashioned way. I cut a 6.5-inch square, and I cut 4 2.5-inch squares, and I used the stitch and flip method. You know, the one where you put a square in the corner of the big square, a 2.5-inch square, and then you just stitch from corner to corner, and you flip that one open and press it, and then those 2 pieces that are hanging off behind there, you just trim off that corner, and you do that on all 4 corners, and then you have the snowball block. So you can do that. You don't have to have this die to do it, but this makes it a lot easier. So another thing you could do is just put a 6.5-inch square in there. That's an easy thing, all right? So you can decide which blocks that you want to put in there, but don't limit yourself. And don't say, well, you know, Darla, I have the 8-inch cube. I don't have the 6-inch cube, because the 6-inch cube is easy. You can make all kinds of 6-inch blocks using the 6-inch cube. But don't be discouraged by that, because you can make a 9 patch out of 2.5-inch squares, which I know you have that strip cutter, so you can make lots of 2.5-inch squares, or you can use your 8-inch cube to do that. You also can do it with your 12-inch cube is easy, because some of those pieces will finish at 6 inches because that's the way it's designed. You could do, what if you did a rail fence? You could do a rail fence here with 2.5-inch strips, 3 of them put together, and just make strip sets and cross cut those into 6.5 inches. So you could put rail fence blocks in there. So you're only limited by your imagination. And if you're worried that you don't have any really good ideas, then you can look in the catalog and find a 6.5-inch, something that finishes at 6 inches. And if we don't have it in stock, I can get it for you, okay? The other thing is if you have this book that Eleanor Burns wrote, there are all kinds of great ideas on how to put blocks together. You can use this as inspiration to come up with blocks that will fill that in. So the one that I did, and you'll see all these attached below the video when you got your email, you'll see that there's a document in there, and it has these in there for you. So this is the way that I filled it in. So I put these are my snowball blocks, and these are my flying geese blocks. And then I wanted it to be a little bit taller and just more interesting, so I added some more flying geese across the top and the bottom. And then I finished the whole thing off with just a 2.5-inch strip of the background fabric. So it was a lot of fun. So what you can do too is think about, when you're thinking about making those blocks to fill in for your sashing, think about shapes that would be really fun to practice your quilting in. Because this is a small quilt. You can do this one on your domestic machine. You don't have to send it off to the long armor. You can do this yourself. You can use your walking foot to make the straight line seams, and you can have fun with that. Or if you've been learning from Joan how to do your free motion quilting, this is a perfect opportunity for you to try out those stitches and try some new things. It can be a lot of fun. Okay. Okay, so if you need to make it fit, remember you can just put the strip, the frame around it. And you know what? Mine isn't perfect. You see this at the bottom? This one is actually really big and fat compared to all the others. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to fit. That's the trick. It's just to make it fit. Let's see. I think that is just about all that I have for you. And but remember, we're here at Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop. Questions about Accuquilt, you just come in and ask us. That's what we're here to help with. So come in and see us, and because we'd love to see your smiling faces anyway, even if it is behind a mask. So this is Darla from Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop. I hope that you really try this. We do have some of these panels in stock. So please come on in, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day. Bye.